Hey, what is going on? Welcome to the 12th episode of the Rumenation podcast. Sorry about that. We are, as always, we are building a nation that is simply just branded by motivation through a simple process called cultivation. Peak athletic performance comes in all sizes, backgrounds, and creeds. And by definition, people may have different opinions, approaches, and thought processes about what that definition may be, just like success is subjective. For example, peak athletic performance may be PRs in practice. Everybody knows it's PRs, right? Practice, or breaking a world record, or making it on the Olympic podium, or just the obsession of competition at the highest level. But again, it all falls back into peak athletic performance. This podcast has centered its focus on exactly that. The definition of peak athletic performance for this podcast is a sports term I refer as rumination, the capacity or ability to sustain performance under mental pressure of competition. So I ask you, what is your definition of peak athletic performance? Look, you guys, I have the one and only Zoey Schaefer in the building, NCAA athlete and compete at the Junior Olympics. So shout out to Zoey. Thank you so much for joining this morning.
No problem. I'm excited.
Well, I really appreciate your time and I'm looking forward to this. So, um, as always, I start off with kind of a vocabulary theme slash kind of an introduction type of way of trying to lift off the podcast. So, in your eyes, Zoey, what is training philosophy mean to you? Whether it's life or just competing at the level of competition you competed at.
Training philosophy, I think to me would be kind of, I think the routine that you hold yourself to accomplish your goals. So kind of widespread in terms of sport and in life. I think you should have kind of a training philosophy for both. One time I hiked Camelback Mountain in Arizona, and this guy lapped me 3 times up and down. And I asked him, I was like, what are you training for? Because, I thought I was in pretty good shape. I trained 20 plus hours a week, pretty intensively. And he was kicking my butt, and he told me for life. And I just thought that was the most unhelpful, but also kind of like the most, a really interesting answer. So kind of ever since then, I think I just adopted this mindset of, you still got to train for life. So I guess my training philosophy, if you will, is kind of just that, like the habits that you build, and that you create for yourself, the routine you create for yourself to be successful, not only in your sport, but in life too.
100%. Wow. What's crazy is I can relate to you in that when you I didn't ask, I didn't have the courage to ask. My ego got parked at the door real quick. I was in Colorado for training for my last world record, and I think there was this mom and this kid, or it might have been like a middle-aged mom. And I was like the first day I got first day I got there, and I saw her working out. And she was running through I think the altitude wasn't too bad. I think it was in the outer skirts of Denver, so it wasn't too high. And she was more than halfway up the mountain. And I was like, I think I took maybe 20 steps and I was exhausted already. And I was like, dang, if this is how it's gonna be, I got a long ways to catch up. So it was definitely a kind of a humble moment. I was like, wow, like uh, this is a lifestyle. This is a holistic part about just being that better conditioned self. So that's crazy. I feel you on that one. So we're just gonna get started. And the first question I have for you, Zoey, is how do training and cultivation differ, if they do in your eyes?
I think those are kind of two different things for me. When I think training, I think the actions that you do repeatedly over and over to achieve a result. And I feel like those are the actions. And then cultivation to me is the process
Mm,
of getting from point A to point B. It's the kind of sowing of the seeds, if you will, to create your farm. I guess I'd say that's how they differ in my mind. I think one is action and one is the process.
100%. Um, moving forward, how do the human ego adversely affect one's athletic performance?
I mean, I think it's different for everyone. I think you see it a lot in the media, especially nowadays, social media. The technology that we have nowadays is crazy. The access that we have to people is crazy. I think we have too much access. I think that a private life is a happy life. And obviously, that's not the lifestyle for everyone. A lot of people make money off of having very not private lives. And so I think ego is kind of a tough one. I think that society today has created kind of an environment where you always have to be humble. Like everyone's
Yes.
always telling you, be humble, be humble, be humble. And I think you should be humble, but I think also that you can't forget to celebrate your accomplishments and your achievements. You should acknowledge the things that you've done. A lot of people have done really cool things. A lot of people have come from, really not great places. And I think about where we grew up and some of the things that we've made it out of, or we're able to avoid how different our lives could have been.
Right.
So I think a little bit of ego is actually good, because I think ego sometimes it's they say fake it till you make it. But I think sometimes ego is that confidence booster that we need. I think ego, it carries you and reminds you to the standards to hold yourself to, lets people know how they can and can't treat you, respond to you, react to
Yes.
you. But I think that it's possible to have a respectful ego. I don't think you don't have to be loud about it. You don't have to be disrespectful with it. I always say it's very possible to do you without being disrespectful of others.
Most deaf. I feel that.
I think ego in that term, I think a little bit of ego is good, just as long as you don't let it, go over the top.
Right.
But wait, what was your original question? That
No,
was a little round.
you're good. You hit it right on the spot. How do you did perfect? How does the human ego
Yeah.
adversely affect one's athletic performance?
Okay, in sports. So I think, I mean, I think any athlete will tell you this. Everybody has their ups and their downs, in sports and in life. But when it comes to sports specifically, I think we've all gone through it. You hit these lows and you're like, man, I want to quit. I don't do this anymore. Is it worth it? Am I going to achieve my goals? And then you have these highs and it's like, okay, yes, everything that I did, it's worth it. All that hard work, the blood, the sweat, the tears. So I think the biggest hindrance or how it could adversely affect you in sports is just forgetting where you came from and forgetting how fast sports can humble you. Sports is one of those things where it's constant, it's always changing, and there's always going to be someone better than you. And I think a lot of people don't want to admit that. Everyone wants to be the best. We're striving for perfection, we're striving for records, we're striving for titles, we're striving for winning. But you can't forget, so are other people, and what you won't do, someone else will, and the talent that you might not have, someone else will have. So I think ego is good, and you should absolutely believe in yourself. I think you should believe in yourself more than anybody else, and you should be a supporter. And I think you should believe in yourself almost to the point where people think it's unhealthy. And the reason that I say that is because that extra little bit of belief is what's going to carry you through those times when everything else is falling down in your head. But with that being said, like I said, don't forget it, like that. Sports will humble you real quick. You're riding on top, and all of a sudden you might get an injury, or you might have a year where you just hit this slump, and then you lose your confidence, and you feel like your streak's gone, or you get new coaches, or it's a new setup, and so many things can change all the time. The new kid on the block comes in, and they're the new hot shit. So
Right. You're
but,
good. You're good. You're good.
yeah, I think ego's good, but don't let it blow your head up too much.
Yeah, there's an athlete that I interviewed last time, Kim Haynes. Shout out to him, by the way. He's a Canadian, three-time Olympic or two-time Olympic athlete. He said, literally what you said. He said something about ego is like fire. You can if you put it in an uncontrollable environment, then that's bad. But if you contain that and learn how to use it, it's good. So you said, I was like, dang, she said it exactly like him. Next question. You're doing phenomenal, Zoe. Thank you so much for joining again. How does confidence play a major role in athletic performance?
I think confidence plays a huge role. So in my sport, I'm a gymnast, and we have a saying that gymnastics is 90% mental, 10% physical.
Mm.
And
Yes, yes.
don't let that fool you. Gymnastics is extremely hard, people. I argue with anybody. It's one of the hardest sports
Yeah.
that you could possibly do. But it's absolutely, absolutely mostly mental. And confidence is a huge thing in that. I mean, when you're talking my sport in general, but if you're talking, I think just sports in general, but thinking of mine in particular, since that's the one that I can identify with most personally, like I'm flipping, a good 30, 40, whatever feet in the air. I'm flipping on a, 4-inch wide beam. It's actually a little bit more narrow than that, but a
Wow.
4-inch wide beam, I'm running full speed at a stationary object and flipping off of it. So there's not a lot of room for doubt. I think doubt creates hesitation, and even the slightest bit of hesitation, and you're on your head or something. um,
Right.
but I think the biggest thing about confidence in sport is, like, think about when you go to a sporting event, right? Nobody wants to go to a boring sporting event.
Mm-hmm.
And no one wants to go to like a like you don't want to go see your favorite team and they just look like losers.
All right.
Like nobody wants to go watch a losing team. Nobody wants to go to a boring sporting event. So I think confidence when it comes to being an athlete is important not only for yourself, but for your audience, for the people you're performing for. So I think you have got to have confidence in your abilities to perform and do your job. But I think when you have confidence too, that's what brings out your personal swagger. That's what brings out the team's, the team's identity and swagger. That's what draws them in the crowd. Like if you like, let's talk about the Lakers for a second, right? If
Ah,
you look at the Lakers, their bench is deep.
right.
Very deep. But from LeBron to whoever they have at the end of their bench that might not ever play, they're gonna walk in the arena every time like they're absolutely the best.
Right.
Regardless of what team they're playing, they could have been up against Jordan's Bulls, and they're gonna walk into the arena like they own the place.
Right.
But what that does is it creates an exciting atmosphere, and now your audience is bought in, and they're excited to see you, and then now the team's excited, and everyone is doing it for each other, and then that confidence goes on to the people. Now the people are ready to get in, do their job. You're doing it for the person next to you, the person across from you. So I think confidence absolutely plays a big role in it. And like I
Right.
said, fake it till you make it. You have to be your biggest fan, because there's so many haters out there that can't do even half of what you can do.
Right. Right.
My favorite is seeing all the comments from people on social media when their favorite team or their favorite players aren't delivering how they want. They just get to smack talking on the internet, and
Right.
from the couch, from the bed, from the office chair, whatever it is. It's like, so you
Yep.
to be able to shrug that off and keep it pushing and
Yep.
keep doing your thing.
100%. It's crazy how many people can. It's always easier commenting from the sidelines, unless right. It's always easier to hate, and um, it's crazy how that's like how fast that moves, and how easy it is to join the hater train, if you will. um, moving forward, so moving on, kind of like the mental aspect of the of sport and competition. So how do you provision your mental game? So how do you get ready? What does that look like?
Um, so like I said, gymnastics specifically, very, very mental. And For me personally, I actually would say the mental piece was more important than the physical. And the reason that I say that is because I was super blessed to be very healthy throughout my whole entire gymnastics career. I started when I was 4. And so for the first, 16 years of my career, I was blessed to be super healthy. And then I hit college athletics, and all of a sudden I started getting injured like crazy. I was having these major injuries that I'd
Wow.
never um, and I'd never been out for prolonged periods of time. So luckily, I heal quick, but I also worked extremely hard to come back quick, and come back better than I was. That was always something that I held very high in very high regards. Um, as a goal of mine was to make sure that I always came back better.
Yeah.
So the mental aspect of that, when I couldn't actually do the skills, everyone was always so surprised at how quick I came back, but I was never surprised because to me, I had never stopped doing them.
Right.
I was still training in my head, and I would, to the point where it felt like I hadn't taken a break. It's just physically like my body felt a little bit healthier, more rested. But
Right.
I was envisioning my routines in my head. I was seeing the exact points that I see before I did a skill, or on my takeoff, on my landings. I was feeling, like literally feeling in my head the feelings that I feel when I do the skills. I was working on my breathing the same. Sorry about work.
You're good. You're good.
But I was working on my breathing the same way I would do it if I was really doing it. And so for me, even when I was out for 6 months, 7 months,
Oh,
8 months,
wow. That's
it
rough.
never felt like that. And I would come back off of almost no training and just hop right back into competition. And that was always everyone's biggest thing, was like, how do you do that? And I just was like, well, I never really stopped training. The
Right.
physical piece is easier to get back into than you think, as long as mentally you're there.
100%. 100%. Which form of competitive pressure is easier to succumb? So give in, physical or mental? Why or why not?
I think that depends on the person.
Okay.
I think I have a high pain tolerance. I'm also extremely stubborn. So unless I physically cannot walk off that mat, like, you're gonna see me finish.
Right.
And you're gonna see me finish with as much dignity as I can. If it didn't go my way. But so I think for me, it's definitely more the mental piece is easier to give into, because my mind is going to be the thing that wants to give up before physically, I think. But with that being said, obviously in sports, if you're not physically where you need to be successful in your sport and to accomplish to get your job done and accomplish what you're trying to do, um, that obviously makes the sport pretty hard. So
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think people can push through injuries and push through, the physical aspects, the tired days, the sore days, the days where you literally just feel like you're gonna fall over. I think you can push through those more than you realize.
Mm-hmm.
The mental piece is there, but I also think too, in athletics, it's so stressed to be strong all the time and mentally strong.
Yeah.
And you have to also remember, like, your brain is also, it's a muscle, and it's also a very important body part that you got to take care of. So you got to give it rest. You got to give it a little bit of love. You got to give it, you got to give it some breaks. So even though you want your mind to be extremely strong, I think acknowledging when you do need to give yourself a mental break is just as important too.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the mental break / mental health is something that is not talked about or underestimated at the professional level. I know that it's like not a lot of people like to peek under the hood and see what's inside, but I like to peek under the hood and get the rag and spray bottle and roll up my sleeves and like to figure that out. 100%. I think that recovery is pretty, I would say, top 3, if not number 1, underestimated and neglected aspect of sport and competition. It has to be done. The gains don't come in without you sleeping. So you got to have good rest. Moving forward, okay. So we're almost halfway. We're almost done, or but a little bit halfway through. What would you say at the NCAA and then Junior Olympics? What if you had to think, what's missing? For example, what needs that? And I don't like to sound like I'm hating on the NCAA double or Junior Olympics, but I'm saying like from an athlete's perspective, what are the higher needs that could be taken care of? Right, it should be. Could there be an improvement? Better trainers, better coaches, better. I mean, obviously there always could be better, but for you personally,
Yeah, I think the mental health piece of it and then the preparation for life. So I'm gonna back up a little bit and cover those two. The junior Olympic level is extremely different from the collegiate level.
Mhm.
There's levels to everything. I think the collegiate level is a little bit more political.
Yeah,
Obviously, you're competing for an institution, it's a business. Well-being is important, but student athlete, athlete student, chicken or the egg type thing.
right,
But I think on the junior Olympic level in gymnastics, at least, I think we start at such a young age, and it really shapes you. Sports shapes you. It's a lifestyle. I
right.
did gymnastics as a hobby or just a sport that I did. I was doing gymnastics 20 hours a week. I started when I was 4. I could walk on my hands almost before I could walk on my feet,
Oh,
and everything that I did surrounded, was with my sport, how I ate, how I slept. I don't even know if you remember, but in high school, like I never got to go to school dances. I didn't get to go to the football games. I didn't get to, do be in the school sports because I was so consumed with
yeah,
doing
yeah,
outside. There's so many things that I missed out on in life, and I don't regret them. Gymnastics and the experiences that it gave me and the places that it took me, the people it introduced me to are priceless. But I think it's really important to acknowledge the role that sports plays, and also in shaping who you are. The core foundations of who I am, some of the accomplishments I'm most proud of in my life, have come from the sport. So
yeah,
I think making sure that there's really people that are looking out for these young people, helping really empower them, helping make them good people, helping them learn from a young age, the importance of, who you are as a person, not just as an athlete. So
right.
helping them believe in themselves from a young age, helping them learn how to set goals, helping them learn how to, be disciplined, how to be grateful for opportunities,
Yes,
leverage themselves, how to use their platforms. You know, all of that I think is extremely important. Also recognizing at the end of the day that they're still kids, they're still young. I don't know if you have seen there's that cheerleading video on Netflix or whatever, that documentary.
uh,
And then there's always things circulating about gymnasts and cheerleaders, I feel like, and kind of it's a very, very intense environment, and
right.
especially in gymnastics in particular, our peak age is like 16 to
Yeah,
18. So, we're training so intensely. People are homeschooling their kids so that they can pursue their gymnastics career and their goals. They're doing 2, 4, 5 hour long training sessions a day. Like I had girls at my gym that were training for 10 hours a day. Can you imagine being 12 and
that's yeah. There's yeah,
10 hours a day for your sport, and you don't even know if you're guaranteed to make it to that level?
yeah,
So I think just, and those are things that you have to do. They are necessary to reach the goals that those people have. And and I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but I think just remembering to, like, they are kids, and what are they like
Yes.
long-term?
Yes. Yes.
Then we were transitioning to college, and the NCAA. I think that's one of the biggest things you'll hear from Olympic level athletes. Whether that was they actually made the Olympics and competed there, or just trained for it their whole life. They come to college and they're burnt out. They come to college and they don't like their sports anymore. They come to college and they never had a good relationship with their coaches and they're scared of them. And they never had a good relationships with their teammates because they were isolated and always working out on their own.
Yes.
It was such a catty, competitive atmosphere, and not the healthy, challenge you to do your best and everyone to do your best atmosphere. So I think having, the right resources around you and the mental health of the athlete extremely important. And then what was the other thing that I said? Oh, just in terms of, I think treating your athletes fairly.
Yeah.
A big discussion is always around your amateur status and then being paid for your name and your likeness and all the things.
Yeah.
And sports as a business. Once you hit the NCAA, a lot of people are being paid to do their sport.
Yeah.
Scholarship through whatever it may be. So I think that's always a hefty discussion, and one that's been in discussion by people that are way smarter than me and have been around for a lot longer. And, know the ins and outs of all the rules a lot better than I. But I think that's always an interesting topic too, is how to protect your athletes
Yeah.
from the system working them
Yep.
versus them being able to utilize the system that's supposed to be in place to help them be successful. I think a lot of athletes, you see it, especially with pro athletes, but they go from having no money and being,
Ah.
a high school athlete or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
moving to college. They might have gotten a scholarship to moving to their professional leagues, and now they're millionaires.
Yep.
And that can change overnight. Like, we're not trained for that. No one trains you for that. No one.
Right.
When you're going through school, we learn how to calculate the angle of a tree to like the parking lot.
Right.
Okay, if like Sally bought 85 watermelons, like how many does Jimmy have type thing.
Right.
But no one teaches you like stocks and investing. No one
Yep.
teaches you how to find a real estate broker.
Mm-hmm.
No one teaches you how to, no one teaches you about a 401k or anything like that. So I think those life skills, how to read a contract. I don't know about you, but I work with contracts all day long now. I've never read a contract in my life. I'm always that person that scrolls down to the bottom and clicks I agree, and I have to do this thing. But I think all these things are so important in life, and nobody teaches you them, and then all of a sudden you're expected to know them.
Yeah.
I think really, protecting your athletes and starting to teach them those things, especially if they're in sports where those opportunities are going to arise and going to be prevalent, would you would save a lot of those sad stories of these people that had all this money and then blew it and now they're bankrupt, or these people that are going to these professional leagues and their mental health is starting to some of the issues that they're having is starting to show up a lot more severely than they can't hide it anymore, and they have to take a step back, or
Right.
And even colleges still benefiting and profiting off of the names and likeness of athletes that have moved on. A lot of schools do that. They have all of these players in the leagues now, and they still use them in all their advertising, and that's fine. They're your alum, and that you help to build them into the person they are and give them the platform that they have. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes it's more athlete student than student athlete, and it's supposed to be a commodity. So
I could not agree. Answer to your question, do I know how to read a contract? Probably not. I am smart enough to understand as a business owner, anything that I deal with, I just give it to my lawyer. So yeah, no, I should brush up on that.
I'm the lawyer.
Huh?
How did you learn how to find a lawyer? There's so many different types of, did you
Mentors. I have a lot of mentors who are extremely smart. I have one of my mentors is shout out to Dr. Dwight Watson. He's the provost, or sorry, the chancellor at Whitewater. So like I have some phenomenal mentors who keep me humble and put me up to their standards. So as a 26-year-old, I'm competing with people who are twice my age. So
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
so mentors, resources, people that have been there, done that, traveled the path, want to give you all the advice. I mean, all those things I think are so important to have.
Yeah. And by the way, the whole how athletes after whether they're going into the pro Dubuque or when they retire, there's a stat. Shout out to Professor Brent Jeffers if you're watching this, man. I know you're probably going to be like, he's a He's one of my top professors, biomechanics professor, kinesiology, and he specializes in track and football. And he says there was a stat, something that goes along with like over 50% of retired NFL players within the first 2 years bankrupt. And it's because they get that overnight success. They play with the money and they get clout and they try to flex and they flex a little too hard. So
Well, a lot of people don't realize so I have a lot of friends in the league, and have kind of talked to some of them about this, but people don't realize how much you pay to be a professional athlete. Besides the lifestyle and upkeeping it, I mean, that's your personal choice and how you do that, but the cost of having an agent,
yes,
the
yep,
cost of having to move all the time if you're traded, or just having a lot of people would call this a luxury, having a training home and maybe a the home where you actually live for where you normally are competing. But for some athletes, it's more of a necessity. The cost of having a dietitian. A lot of athletes,
yes,
to stay at peak performance, you need a dietitian, to have a physical therapist or something outside, helping you with that recovery that you talked about. And then taxes. When you're in a tax bracket like that,
yeah,
40% plus on your taxes. So people don't really realize, yes, these players are making millions of dollars or a year or hundreds and hundreds of thousands, but there's a lot of expenses that go into that
right,
too. And I'm
yeah,
not saying that they're underpaid or anything,
yep,
but I'm just saying, again, that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize is there's so many different moving parts and so many people
there
just aren't
is.
prepared to go into that world. They don't know what they're getting into.
No, no, they don't. No, they really don't. We're almost done. Moving forward. So kind of get into the last segment of our uh podcast. So I said at the beginning, rumination, referred in this podcast, is a sports term that the definition of rumination is the ability to sustain performance under mental pressure of competition. Right? It's one thing to attain performance success, peak athletic performance, but it's another thing to sustain. So, if you can reflect back right now and you're at your peak prime, on a scale 1 through 10, how is your rumination? So how ready 1 through 10? How ready were you to sustain performance under mental pressure of competition on a scale 1 through 10?
I would say at my peak, honestly, a 10.
That's
Like,
awesome.
there's not a situation you could have put me in that I wouldn't have made it work. With cold, hot, 3 a.m., 3 p.m., whatever the time, and elevation at an all-time high or an all-time low, like I would have made it work. But that just goes back to my preparation and my confidence and that mental training, kind of just wrapping up everything that we've talked about here so far. But I would say at my peak, um, I was just doing everything to the book. I
Yep.
was eating right, I was recovering right. Mentally, I was bought in. I had my goals. I knew exactly where I wanted to be. I was determined to get there. And I just wasn't going to take no for an answer. And
There you go.
I did what I had to do. I was putting in the reps. I was putting in the quality reps, not just getting the numbers in. But it just got to the point where I just really believed in myself and was super confident and knew, no matter what the situation was, if I had to wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes before I was allowed to compete, or if they played the wrong floor music and I had to go out there and do to no music, or whatever the situation was, I knew that I was going to go out there and just do my job, because at the end of the day, that's all you can do, is really focus on yourself. And gymnastics is kind of weird. It's a team sport, but it's an individual sport.
Yeah.
It's kind of unique in that way. A lot of sports are either team or they're individual, and gymnastics is very, very much both. In college, the way that it works is you have a lineup of 6 girls, and then 5 of those scores count. But usually you have anywhere from 12 to 20 girls on a team. So as you imagine, consistency is key. You have to earn your spot in lineup every week or you don't compete. And we all train the same amount of hours. We're all doing the same work. And so, obviously imagine training 20 hours a week to not compete would be so terrible, So making sure that you maintain that consistency,
Right.
of doing all the things that you can possibly do to set yourself up to be the most successful that you can and to make it worthwhile is extremely important. And so with gymnastics, like I said, your individual performance matters, because if you aren't delivering, if you aren't doing your job, if you aren't being consistent, you're not going to compete.
Right.
But those 6 girls up, that counts towards the team score. And in college, it's really only the team score that matters the most. It's not really so much about the individual titles and stuff. You have to do your job for the team to be able to be successful. I think at my peak, I would say I was just at this point where I knew, no matter what was going on around me, I was going to do my job for my team,
Right.
first and foremost. But yeah, I was kind of just unshakable, and I was doing the best that I'd ever done athletically, and I was in the best place that I was in ever, mentally and physically. So it's kind of a cool spot to be in, kind of feel unstoppable.
Right. Hey, look, guys, there you have it. Zoey Schaefer, NCAA and Junior Olympics. Thank you so much for bringing us home, bringing the nuggets, bringing the wisdom, bringing the training philosophy here to the table at the Rumenation podcast. I really, really do appreciate the time. And I do wish you good luck in whatever you do. Obviously, you're going to be very successful. So much love and blessings. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.